Welcome to One Thought at a Time with Ian Travers, where we get curious about what makes us tick. I cannot, in all faith, give an objective introduction to our guest today, so welcome to my eldest son, Charlie Travers.
Hi, it's weird being on this side of the camera.
Yeah. So I guess it's worth just saying that you are absolutely most comfortable the other side of the camera.
Yeah, so I usually sit there,
Yeah.
like just off camera, and I will always sit that side of camera. Well, I've been on all of these episodes, so I guess it's about my time.
But I think, the reason that I know we talked about having this conversation is I think your route to where you've got now is a non-conventional route. And there might well be other people out there who have trod a similar path or are thinking about treading a similar path.
Yeah, I guess that's fair enough to say.
Yeah. So let's kick off then. So for those who don't know you, what do you do?
So I work in the film industry. I balance my time really between, I spend probably half my time, I work as a freelance camera assistant and a camera operator. So I've worked with, the BBC, I've worked with ITV, Channel 4, Netflix. I've worked with all the big names on that side, either as a focus puller or a loader or a camera operator, anything on that side. And then the rest of my time, I run a production company based up in York where I live, called Polychrome Studios. We actually produce this. So that's, I spend my time there doing more like big picture stuff. I'm the creative director there, and I also I DP most of the projects we do. So I'm very hands-on in that sense.
And for people who aren't in the film industry, DP is?
Director of photography. So they're in charge of all the cameras and the lights, making it look pretty.
I know only too well that you always work hard and continue to work hard. But how do you spend your free time?
How do I spend my free time? I spend a lot of my free time working, if in a sense, like when I'm not on set, I do spend a lot of time tinkering with the cameras and looking at, what's the latest and greatest that we should be hopping on? What's the current trends in commercials that we should be looking to have a look at? What's the latest behind the scenes of the feature that's come out, and how can we replicate some of that? There's a lot of time spent working, but I'm not working because it doesn't feel like work. I do a lot of it. It's where I spend a lot of my free time, and it's. Yeah.
Do you find that time just flies by when you're
100%? Like there'll be days where the office will start really tidy, we'll get kit put away, and then I'll be listening to something, I don't know, a podcast or something. It'll trigger an idea, and then I'll have to get the camera out. I've got to try it. So get the camera out, and then. At the end, all of a sudden it's the end of the day. I haven't eaten anything, and there's kit all over the office. So I've got to tidy it up and make something to eat. Do
you think it's important to do you find downtime?
I choose to spend a lot of my downtime tinkering, because at the end of the day, me tinkering with what is the best place to put the microphone on our camera over there, that's not earning us any money. It's making my life easier when I go out and shoot, which is why I do it. And I hope it makes the lives of everyone else at the company, everyone else who uses the kit, it's life easier, because to anyone on the outside, you might say, well, what's actually the difference? To someone on the inside, there is a big difference. It's very different working on, a commercial with Warwick Davies to this podcast. It's still the film industry, but it's different. So I like to think that I can take the things I learned from being a camera assistant and working with, director of photographies who've worked on, all the big things, these people with loads of experience, and take what I can from every one of those jobs and bring it back into the company. And, how can I adapt that into my own work? How can I make the camera operators' lives easier? How can I make the editors' lives easier? How can we just make it run more smoothly? what can I take from a big production with loads of experience to our little, production company in York? And
I know you ooze it. This is a passion, isn't it?
100%.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. A lot of the people that I end up, working with, a lot of people talk about work-life balance, and I always think that's a bit flawed, actually, because our life is a blend of what we do to earn money and what we do when we're not earning money, and they're not always discrete, are they?
Work-life balance. It's the implication there that they are completely separate, and they're just inherently not. There's I have a 2-bedroom flat, and one of them is my bedroom, and the other one is full of all the kit and the editing machines and all the hard drives for the company. It's where it all lives. So they're what, 6 inches apart through a wall. They can't be that separate.
It's an interesting thing, I think, particularly in today's world with hybrid working and people even not going into an office and doing a lot of work from home, this thing between the workplace and the home place, it's just a place.
Yeah.
You know,
it is.
and it's your balance is almost in your head rather than physical, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I do. You know, I don't eat in the office where I can avoid it. You know, I don't. When I choose to spend an evening doing something else, I'll go out of the office. Like I very much try to keep that space as like, this is my workspace, but I do spend most of the day in there.
Yeah.
Or, you know, or on set.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense, isn't it? And you all know when we first started running a business from home, you know, you to have a separate place where you go and do your work. I think that's mentally very, 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 very
yeah,
healthy.
I think so. Like it wasn't until this year that I've been able to have a separate place to work. Like I've always, I mean, you know this, I've always had the bed, and then at the end of the bed there's been a desk, you know, with a computer full of hard drives. It's where all the editing's done, and I'd stay up late editing, you know, early hours of the morning. I'd be like, right, I'm done, and I'll just turn around and then flop into bed.
Yeah.
So it has felt more, it has felt healthier actually separating the two for once.
Yeah, completely get that. So there you are. So you are, you know, working on some great stuff with some names that people will know and companies that people will know. You've got Polychrome Studios. Brilliant. How did you get there? What was the route?
I've never really been a particularly arty person. I think people will know me, can attest that I can barely draw a stick man, let alone, you know, paint a picture. So I'm not sure anyone who's ever taught me anything would ever describe me as arty. I was always, you know, maths, engineering, that sort of stuff. That's what I guess that's where I just assumed that I would end up through school for the most part. And it was probably, I remember it was one project that I did. I don't remember what year it was at school, but it was like, I think we had to do some research on Quakers.
I remember it well. And
you had to like, there was like a load of different things you could do, and you had to do 2 of them in over the course of a few weeks or whatever. And one of them was like, you can make a film about I think it was just to make a film about Quakers. It was very generic. I was like, well, why not? We'll give it a go. So took your iPhone 5 and we went to Derby Cathedral because it had some historical significance. And that was really the first video I shot ever, you know, not on a camera, on a phone. And I don't know what it was about, because I can't say that it was, from that point I knew I wanted to work in the film industry, because I don't think that's true. But it was at least then that I knew that that was something that I enjoy and that I was interested in. It's not really presented. When you go to the careers person at school, they don't go, why don't you try joining the film industry? Because, I mean, it's not a stable job. There's no stability in it. It's not something that you'll find people recommend you go into. So I think the reason that I didn't aspire to it straight away is because I wasn't made aware it was a choice.
What about the thing that sticks in memory for me as well, is when you were interviewed on BBC on East Midlands Today. You'd shot a documentary which turned out to be like a small project for Local in the Village, but that actually...
You know what, you're probably right. For context, I've never had like a bar job or a retail job, and that's not because I haven't worked. You know, it's not like you've been handing it all to me, but because I started doing video when I was younger with a phone, when I eventually got my first camera, it was a Canon 700D with the kit lens. I was like, well, I started just shooting videos for people, and then eventually, you know, like 30 quid there, 50 quid there, whatever, and that was enough, you know, when you're younger, to keep yourself going, to buy a pack of sweets down the shop or whatever.
Yeah.
So a woman from the charity, her name was
to do
Frances,
with dementia.
Frances from the charity Dementia Friends in the village. She said, like, I think I've got a project that, you know, you could help me with. It could be of interest to you. I'd like to make a documentary with these, basically telling the stories of the local people that they help with dementia. So we could like capture their memories forever. They would give them like a solid copy of something. I guess that probably was a point where it was, okay, this could be something, because at the time, I mean, you know, it turned out all right. It served its purpose, which really it was for the people who were in it. the film was for the contributors. It was for the people that essentially wanted their names, not their names, but their memories on screen. I remember because we actually premiered it at the local hall. I think something like 500 people came to see it. We projected it onto a big screen, and I remember distinctly the first time we showed it, there was one of the people in it had quite severe dementia, and she didn't remember me coming to film with her for the few days that we were with her. I remember her pointing, looking at the screen and going like, "Oh, like that's me up there," like almost like how did I get up there? I don't remember any of that, and that was quite a moment for me. I mean, it stuck with me because it's the realization that maybe because a doctor saves lives, an engineer builds bridges. It's the moment that you realize that maybe doing this kind of thing can actually have an impact on people.
I remember there was a sentence, you may or may not remember saying it, when you were being interviewed by the BBC, and I think it went something like, it was about the power of creative media and that everyone's got a story to tell. I
do think everyone does have their own story. They've got something to say. You can learn something from everyone, which is, I think, documentaries have been of interest. That was the first feature anything I worked on. I really wasn't ready for it, and we're now at the moment working on another massive documentary project, and I still don't think we're quite ready for it. So maybe I was. It's the time. You just got to do it. Like if the documentary opportunity came my way, if the opportunity for that project came my way, I wasn't going to say no, because then I'm not getting it.
It's interesting because as you'll know from being the other side of the camera, we've had many guests on this podcast, and there is a theme here about this grasping the opportunity as it came past, and words like I never thought I'd, or I wasn't ready, but then you do it and suddenly stuff happens.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure you have to feel ready for something. Sometimes you can just do it. If it comes your way, what's the worst that happens? It all goes wrong. It's a learning opportunity. We move on, do it again.
And I think there's a tension as well. I think if you're always, how would I phrase this? If you're always not quite sure you're ready, it kind of puts you at your best place, doesn't it? It just puts a little bit of positive tension there. So you try harder, you push yourself harder. And that's maybe how some of us grow.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked on loads of stuff, and I can't say there's anything that I've worked on where I haven't been, partly sleepless the night before and anxious the morning of, and you turn up and it takes you 5-10 minutes just to figure out, what is your relationship to the focus puller going to be like? What's the relationship to the director of photography going to be like? What, and then it takes you 5-10 minutes and you go, you know what, actually I do kind of know what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
So it's all okay.
If you don't push yourself and you don't have that thing that you aspire to, then you will never have experienced imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I'm maybe I'm not worthy, maybe I'm not the right person. Well, you must be, because you're making lots of people happy. So
I mean, it doesn't. I don't know. I feel like I'm at the point where it's. I get imposter syndrome on almost every project, but it doesn't particularly matter because it's like I'm there. Well, I'm there now. I can't. I'm not going to turn around and go home. That would be ridiculous.
No.
So I mean, because there's only one time I've ever done that, which is I got to a few days before a project and I pulled out because I didn't feel like I was ready for it.
You felt that was a step too far?
Yeah, in retrospect, I mean, I probably could have done it, but it was at the time, I was like, there's absolutely... I didn't want to go and make a fool of myself, so I said, sorry, but you have to find someone else.
How did you know that it was going to be film, do you think?
I can't say there was one significant moment where it was like, huzzah, this is when I'm going to go and do film, or, I didn't have an inciting incident, it just happened. After doing a few, you're like, oh, maybe I quite like this, and then you make a few more films, and you go, oh, maybe I am all right at this, and then you make a few more, and you go, oh, actually, I don't know what I'm doing at all, but I enjoy it. I love doing it most of the time. No, that's a lie. I love doing it all the time, even if it is going wrong, or even if it's a crap project or whatever. But yeah, I mean, there wasn't this is the moment. It just kind of happened, and I try not to think about it too much. I'm just going to keep letting it happen and see where it takes me.
So there was a time years ago where I know when you were doing some of your earlier projects, and there was very much I have to do it. You know, I have to do it. I can't have anyone else doing it. That's not the case now. I think you really you value and have built a team around you. Do you think there's anything around that maybe you would reflect on?
I'm not a particularly trusting person, just overall, and it's not always the most helpful position to take, but I tend to initially take the position of skepticism with new people and new things. So yeah, you're right. A few years ago, when it was just me and I was making videos for people, I wouldn't dream of handing off the edit to someone else, or letting someone else deal with sound, or God forbid, let someone else touch the camera and operate the camera for once. Like, that would never have happened, because it was like my thing. So I didn't want it to get messed up out of my control. I wanted to be in control of it all. And I do definitely still retain some of that. Like, I always, there's a team of us now. Polychrome is 4 people. And when you work on a set, that can be, 10, 15, 40, 50 people or more, depending on what you work on. And it's like you recognize that, okay, maybe there are people better at this than you. And it's not that I ever thought I was the best at everything, but I think, I grew up in, a little village, and I went to a school in a town in the Peak District. There wasn't anyone else who was interested in this or did this. So if I was handing anything off, I knew it was going to go worse because there wasn't anyone else who cared about it. Whereas then moving away and seeing, there actually are other people interested in the same thing, that's where it was. I think I just needed to see that the other people cared about it like I cared about it, because it was if I couldn't tell that they cared about it the same, then I was skeptical.
Yeah. And you do, and that comes across in everything that I've seen you do for certain. Is you care. It has to be right. It has to be Charlie's version of right. But that's the creative piece, isn't it? Because you have in your mind, whenever there's a project, you must go through a thought process where you are just the creative piece coming out, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm quite often running at like 1,000 miles an hour, as I'm sure you know, and I'm sure anyone who's worked with me in Polychrome knows that I can like jump ahead of myself a little bit. So I think that's where some of the creative comes for me. It's like, if there's mention of a new project, I'm already halfway through production and into the edit. You know what I mean? It's okay. I skip out some of the details, which is why we've now got a team of people. Austin and Hannah keep me under control to a sense. They make and I don't really know I don't think we'd be able to get to where we are with the business without them, because I would have forgotten everything, bought no hard drives, and have nowhere to store the footage. There wouldn't be an edit because it wouldn't have been done, and I would have lost everything because I wouldn't kept track of everything. I'm not particularly good at that a lot of the time, because I can just tend to run through things quite quickly. I remember I used to be big into maths at school. Maths was like my subject until we got to film. Maths was like my subject, and I was quite good at it. I was near the top of the class for maths, but when it came to you used to have to do mental maths problems, and it would be a sheet of like 20 or 30 questions, and there would be a tape that read out the things to you, and then you would have to just answer it. There was no room to do workings out, so you just had to do it in your head and write it down before it got to the next one. And I never ever had any issues at all working out the answer and getting something down on the page, because I just ran through it. My head just ran through it all. But I think there might have been only one time, if any, that I ever got full marks, and it wasn't because I didn't know the answer, but I don't know, maybe it's arrogance. I would just do it, be like, done, and then move on. And when you're moving that quickly, you don't sometimes spot the mistakes there, which is why I think it's so important that we have a team around us, because there are countless times where I would have messed something up. But like here we go, a little bit of podcast insider. I'm not even sure. I'm not sure you know about this. There is one episode of the podcast. So we shoot this podcast with 3 cameras. There's 1, 2, and 3 over there. And there is one episode where there are only 2 angles, right? And it was an episode that it was the only episode of this podcast where I've not had anyone down with me because we had to shoot it last minute. And there's no wide camera in that. And it's because in trying to rush and get all this done by myself, I didn't notice that the wide camera could actually see both of the others. And you couldn't see, you couldn't make out either of the guests because the camera stuck out in front of them.
Right.
And like, that's the kind of stuff that you can't keep making mistakes like that. That's why we always have at least 2 of us here to do this. You know?
So the learning there is, I suppose, it's about having a team that you trust.
Yeah, and I do. I have full faith in everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone here at Polychrome, and it's always nice when you go on a job with the people you know that you can trust to do what they do well.
Yeah, and did you? It's an interesting word that I obviously use quite a lot. But did you believe you could do it?
That's a tricky one. I didn't. I think what is it? You know, like I don't. I have a very strong want to just keep doing it. There isn't. I don't have a plan B. There isn't there isn't an accounting degree on the side where if all this fails, I'm going to go and work in the accounts department or get a desk job. There isn't a plan B. So I guess you could call it a belief it's going to work out, or have I just put myself in a position where I actually don't have an option other than for it to work out?
Hey, either of that works, doesn't it?
It works, you know. I don't have an option other than to make it work.
It's interesting. Again, it's a theme that comes up with previous guests. You know, we don't all have this great big mapped out plan because life often doesn't pan out that way. But to have a mind of what you enjoy about the process, you know, and it's keep doing what you enjoy, I guess.
Yeah, I can't say that at any point I've known what I've been doing the next year. It's changed very quickly because it's gone from, you know, there was one year in school where I'm going to go to uni and do maths, to the next it's like, okay, maybe I'm interested in film. Then, you know, a year or 2 later, okay, I don't know how you ended up doing this, but you're working for a production company in Leeds. How's that happened? And then if you'd asked me while I was there, you know, just at the start of that job, if you'd asked me, oh, do you think you're going to leave next year? I was like, well, why would I leave? I love it here. And then I left and then started Polychrome, and I was like, cool, that's great. And then if you'd have told me when I was working at Superla, it's like, oh, by the way, did you know you were going to drop out of uni as well? It's all changed very quickly. So I guess I haven't quite got to a point where it's all settled and I can look back. I'm not a very reflective person in general. I don't tend to look backwards. I just tend to keep running in the same direction. So
didn't Walt Disney say something like that? Keep moving forward.
Yeah, something like that. Meet the Robinsons, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just happens. I'm just going through it.
So the other thing that I'm sure people would pick up when they hear you mentioned about drop out of university, which can have negative connotations. I actually think it's the opposite. You took a conscious decision.
Yeah, it wasn't
to not complete university.
Right through school, you're told, you know, you go to school, you do your A-levels, you go to uni, and then you magically get a job out the other end. And I don't know, maybe that happens to some people. I can't say I've been through it, and I've not lived both sides of it, so I can't answer that. But I had been doing video for a long time before I went to uni. Before I got to uni, I was already working at a production company in Leeds. And I kind of like idolized the idea of uni, the idea of university, of, you know, it's all just going to be, I don't know, I'm not sure what I expected it to be, but then I got there and it wasn't that. Whatever I had expected it to be, I think I very quickly realised it wasn't that. And maybe that's because it was during COVID. But, you know, however you want to take that. But
there was a sense, I got a sense from you that you almost felt as if it was slowing you down.
Yeah, it felt like I was sprinting in one direction and then I'd like hit some mud, essentially, because I appreciate that they have to take it all from zero, but I didn't feel like I was at zero. And there was some time spent on stuff that I already knew that I tried and I wasn't interested in. And then was some time spent on doing things that I'd already been doing. It got to where I was at the end of first year. I was like, well, you know, I'll finish this off and maybe it'll get better next year, because you know, you get to choose what you want to do to an extent.
And post-COVID.
And post-COVID, in theory.
In theory, yeah.
And it got 3 months in, I was like, it's the same story. I can't, because I'd been working at the production company. I'd worked on, you know, a few more features that year. I worked on a great feature with someone from that production company. It was a feature that won loads of awards at film festivals. It was a feature documentary with Sandy Toksvig. Ended up on BBC 4. That was great. I did my first narrative feature in that year. I know there's a moment where I'd made the decision. It was, I guess you could call it a spur of the moment thing, but really it was like the straw that broke the camel's back in that situation. It was I got a friend in Manchester who I've worked with quite a lot. He's a great sound mixer, Josh Dykes. I've worked with him a bunch of times, and he rang me up one evening. He's like, "Oh, what are you doing next week? I've got a music video for you. We need a camera assistant." I can't remember what it was. I can't remember who it was for. It might have even been for H. I can't quite remember. But he was like shooting on Ronin. We've got the Alexas out, so it's all the dream kit, right? Can you do it? And I couldn't do it because I had an assessment on that day. I was like, well, what is the point? This is what I want to do, and I'm having to turn it down to stay at uni, and I'm in second year. What is the point? Like, I was, as I'm sure you can tell, quite heated. And it was, well, if you really do want to drop, I go speak to your supervisor, and I did. And then 6 weeks later, I was like, that's it. That's when I'd left. I packed up because I couldn't keep turning down. You know, this was, you go to uni to get a job at the end of it, and I was already getting the job
that you wanted, the job that you wanted,
the job that I really wanted, and I was having to turn that down.
Yeah.
To stay in, that didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. So I guess having some clarity there about, you know, not an ultimate career plan, but you knew what you wanted to get into and do, and you now were being presented with this opportunity, and you took it. Yeah.
Well, I wish I could have gone back and, you know, left a little earlier and taken that. But, you know, maybe if I wasn't offered that, then I wouldn't have left.
Yeah, maybe that served the purpose.
Yeah, maybe it did.
Okay. I'm going to ask you the final question, and you'll have heard this many times now, so you might have a slight advantage, and you might even have worked an answer out. I don't know, but you know, let's assume we can travel in time, and you could leave a note to your younger self, whatever, you know, wherever and whenever that is. What do you think, knowing what you know now, you would say to yourself?
See, I'm not sure I'd go back and change anything. I wouldn't want to change anything massively, because I wouldn't go back and tell myself not to go to uni, because if I hadn't have gone in the first place, I wouldn't have met, you know, the guys that started Polychrome Studios. And, you know, I wouldn't tell myself don't carry on doing things other than film, because, you know, I did maths and further maths and German A levels, and I enjoyed them. But I guess my only piece of advice is just like to myself, or just being like, I probably don't slow down.
Don't slow down.
Don't slow down. Just keep. I can't say anything that bad has happened from just kept running in this direction, whatever direction this might be, at full pelt. So, like, you know, keep going. And if you can run a little faster, then, you know, we might have been here a little sooner.
Great stuff. Brilliant. Well, that's been good. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no worries.
Let's wrap it up. So this has been One Thought at a Time with Ian Travers, and my guest this week, my oldest son, Charlie. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please do like or subscribe. If you've enjoyed this one and you want to listen to some of our other stuff, you can find us on YouTube, on TikTok, and on Instagram. So look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.